Welcome, everyone. My name's Josh. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the story of my ICL surgery. This is part one, where I will just focus on what is ICL, how I learned about it, and how I made the final decision to get the surgery. For those of you who don't know, ICL stands for an implantable columnar lens. Sometimes they call it implantable contact lens. Essentially, it's a procedure to stick a permanent lens inside your eye. It goes in front of the typical lens they replace for cataract surgery, but behind your eye's natural iris. So it was quite a journey for me. I started off at a very young age needing glasses, probably about 7, 8 years old. My prescription got progressively a lot worse over time. Got to the point of when I had the surgery, I had -9 in addition to having astigmatism on top of that. Um, Ultimately, there were just some things that caused me to want to have the surgery where I was afraid of glasses kind of flying off and being, essentially very, very, very blind. Didn't want to go through that. Uh, there were occasional times when that type of thing did happen, like a lens popped out of my glasses, um, or glasses kind of flew off in the middle of a water park, situations like that. There are obviously ways that I could have gone around some of those things. Switching to contacts for one. Trade-offs there where contacts aren't really a great idea when you're in water, for lots of reasons, infection primarily. Um, Also, various kind of water type goggles, prescription goggles, things of that nature. They always kind of seem to have their trade-offs with fogging up and stuff. And, for whatever reason, I decided that this was kind of a better approach for me. The initial option obviously is LASIK that most people consider, and I did as well. When I kind of started this journey, I heard about LASIK when I was in college. I heard about it before that, but a friend of mine had really kind of had it and recommended it. But at the time, I was incredibly scared of any type of eye surgery that would happen, or I mean, even putting contacts in was scary enough to where I couldn't commit to that. So having surgery was kind of immediately shot down. Even somebody kind of talking about the process had me start to faint, and it was not a positive experience at all. So ultimately, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to commit to anything, but I'm going to make a decision to go through and see, is it a viable option for me. Um, a friend of mine at work had recently had the procedure done, so I just went to that same clinic to find out, is this, an option for me? Prior to that, I'd spent like a whole weekend online researching, learning all about it, kind of psyching myself up, and being open to going through with this. Ultimately, it was determined I was not a good candidate for LASIK just because my corneas are too thin, and this kind of often happens with a high prescription. So, um, with LASIK, you need to have enough of the cornea shaved off in order to, leave enough to safely be able to not have some serious eye conditions going forward. And in my case, either any of the LASIK surgeries like LASIK, PRK, were not an option because there just wouldn't be enough cornea left. At the time, I was told my only choice was to have early cataract surgery. Essentially, what that means is cataract surgery happens to lots of people, especially people with high myopia as they get into their 60s and 70s, where the natural lens of your eye starts to get harder and can't, um, kind of calcifies essentially. So you won't be able to see. Ultimately, it kind of leads to blindness. It's somewhat inevitable. Um, But cataract surgery is kind of a common procedure where they'll replace that lens that ends up being really, really cloudy and replace that with an artificial lens. And there's several um, lens options that you could replace it with. At the time, uh, I really thought this was a bad idea. I was still in my early 30s, and it would mean I'd immediately go right into reading glasses, and fairly higher prescription reading glasses. Typically, reading glasses are something that's more of a gradual change. You'll go from uh, as you go into your mid 40s and into your 50s and 60s, kind of gradually you'll need stronger and stronger reading glasses, or even before that, you'll just start to kind of need bigger text, maybe zoom in on text a little bit more, or use bigger font, or kind of slowly pull things farther away from your eye. But in a situation like the early cataract surgery, also known as clear lens exchange, you're you don't have that option. You just immediately are in a spot where you can't see that text without the reading glasses. Now these days there are some other options, but they all have trade-offs. I'm not going to go into that too much. Feel free to message me if you'd like to know more about all the cataract surgery options because I've delved deep into them. But essentially, um, I on my own discovered ICL as what I thought was a better option than cataract surgery. Unfortunately, at the time, ICL was fairly rarely done. Not so much rarely done as a whole, much more popular outside of the United States. Um, but in the US, the problem is most patients that are doing this have very high myopia and are young. It's only approved for ages 22 to 45, FDA approved. So you're not going to be doing too many procedures, so lots of surgeons don't have the practice on it, and um, you need some specialized equipment to measure the interior chamber depth of the eye and things of that nature. So not a lot of surgeons were available that had practice on it, and the closest option would have been uh, I think the closest was about like 2.5 hours away, and so for me, logistically, I at the time had two young kids, and it just wasn't something that could even consider. Um, so, a few years down the road from there, I kind of started considering again. I went to my regular eye doctor, and he typically brings it up, just a standard line that, like, obviously people in your position, there's no way that you wouldn't have considered having surgery, to fix your vision. And it got me thinking, and that's when I found out that the FDA had recently approved this newer version of the ICL lens called the Visian Evo ICL lens. And that kind of opened up a little bit more of an option for me at the time. I was thinking uh, I wouldn't have to get what was called an iridotomy, where they essentially poke a couple holes in your eye. Let's not sugarcoat it. That's a little bit of a scary thought for sure. And based on everything I read, that's kind of the scariest part of the procedure for a lot of people. But for me in my situation, that wouldn't be necessary anymore with this Evo option. I did a little research into it, and again, there weren't a lot of surgeons around there. The closest would have been about a 2-hour drive. I decided, listen, if I'm gonna go through with this or even consider it, I need to I need to go to the best. I don't want to go to just a random closest guy, even if that might make sense. So I went to that Vizian ICL website. I'll include a link in the description for that. And that had a list of all of the surgeons that perform ICL. And at the time, you could sort by surgeon experience. And what I found is not the closest option, but one of the closest options was actually a surgeon in Boston who had been performing ICL for a very long time. I believe it was like close to 20 years Vizian ICL hadn't been approved for that long, but there was an older version of the lens that he had done before that. I also found some YouTube videos of him talking about LASIK complications and cataract surgery. So, this guy's been around the block, and I felt fairly comfortable with him. That's it for part one. In the next episode, I'll talk about how I prepared, what the day of surgery was like, and how everything unfolded.